how does your breathing look when you're stressed, when you're angry, when you're overwhelmed? It's short, it's shallow, it's rapid. So it's reflecting what's going on internally. So in our bodies, we have something known as the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so autonomic meaning automatic. It functions on its own. We don't have to use our conscious control to tell the body what to do and when to do it. Thousands of years ago, when we lived in the veldt, we were exposed to real life threats, to predators. So this nervous system developed and evolved for extreme threats. Because of our modern lifestyle and all of these stresses, we're in this low grade fight or flight. And it's almost as though we've forgotten how to get into that parasympathetic nervous system. And so it's also important to look at the nervous system as a spectrum. It's not either all on and all off. There's different spaces that we can be in this nervous system. So breath is the only part of this nervous system that is both automatic, so we don't have to control it, it is happening on its own, but we have conscious control. So we can tap into breath, and breath can shift that state. So in the breath, you're getting into those parts of the nervous system and the body where those traumas and fears and memories were stored. And also through going into the subconscious mind, where we've suppressed and held these memories where they haven't been fully integrated.
Greetings, seekers of ancient wisdom. We are back again for another exciting show. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Priyal Modi. She's an integrative medicine practitioner and an advanced breathwork practitioner. So, Dr. Priyal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, Dr. Priyal, what is conscious connected breathing? That is really what brought me to contact you and have this chat. So conscious connected breathing is something that I stumbled into in a book called The Presence Process by Michael Brown. I don't know if you've heard of that book, but he speaks about a breathing technique where you don't have pauses between your in breath and out breath. You have the same steady in breath and out breath, so maybe 3 counts in, 3 counts out, or 4 counts in, 4 counts out, whatever it is, steady, but no holding of your breath at the changeover between in and out breath. So you have this cycle, conscious connected breathing, and then there's a mantra that you say connected with your breath. And I found that extremely powerful. It's such a simple technique, but is that what conscious connected breathing is to you?
So there's different forms of conscious connected breathing. I mean, when we say conscious, it's literally just being aware of the breath. And connected is, like you mentioned, when there are no pauses. So that could be, an inhale and exhale through the nose with a certain count where there are no pauses. That is a form of conscious connected breath. But what I'm referring to in particular, and the technique that I use when I mention conscious connected breathing, is a bit different to that. So in this form of conscious connected breath work, it is a continuous breath. There are no pauses, and we generally use the same channel for the inhale and exhale. So that may be in and out through the nose or in and out through the mouth. But this is also a circular breath. So circular meaning the inhale is active and the exhale is passive. So it's not that linear rhythm to the breath. And then we're expanding into the diaphragm. So we're using the belly, and that's where the breath is arising from, but then expanding throughout the body. So that's what in particular I refer to when I say that I conduct the conscious connected breathwork sessions.
Amazing. And I'm glad you clarified that there's so many different types and they all have slightly different functions, I would imagine. They have different types of release work or different layers that they go into. So in the practice that you facilitate, what are the kind of benefits that you see and how does it work in the body?
So, firstly, just to note that all forms of breathwork are transformational, whether you're starting with even just a simple breath awareness. There are just some techniques that may be more powerful or elicit a stronger, more intense response within you. So, it's not to say that one is better than the other, but they have different purposes and functions and the way that they influence the body. So, in this particular technique, it's usually done guided. So it's best to be done with a facilitator, at least in the initial stages. Once you're an experienced practitioner, you may be able to practice some form of it on your own. So these sessions are, if it's a one-on-one, it may be 50 to 60 minutes. In group settings, it could be 2 hours. And even under the term of conscious connected breathwork, there are still different types of this form as well. So the benefits, I mean, maybe I can explain a little bit about how it works first before we jump into benefits. So what we're doing when we're inducing the state, each inhale, we're activating that sympathetic, that stress response. And each exhale, we're letting go, we're softening, we're dropping into that parasympathetic nervous system. So we're working with both sides of our nervous system in this breath. So we're creating a conscious stress and then a relaxation into it. So we're teaching the body how to relax into stress, into moments of tension, into when we're very activated. Okay, so we're regulating that nervous system. So a lot of people have, a majority of people, we live in this narrow bandwidth of our nervous system and we don't go too much on either side. This is our safety zone. So when, with all forms of breathwork, but particularly in this one, you're expanding deeply into both. So you're getting into the aspect of the stress response and the relaxation response that may be uncomfortable for you in daily life. Okay, so an important part of the benefits of breathwork on a physiological level, on a mental, emotional level that you're seeing is how we're working with the nervous system, which is really key because it influences and affects every other system in our body. It influences how we function. And I can get a bit more into the nervous system a bit later if you'd like to understand that a bit better. But when we also go into the circular breath, we're creating this closed circuit within ourselves. And when we breathe, we're not just breathing in air, we're breathing in prana, we're breathing in chi, we're breathing in life force. So we're creating this energetic circuit in the body. And so we're mobilizing energy that may be stuck or stagnant in the body. We're creating releases. So you may feel that on a physical level, on a mental, emotional level. You may feel it in a subtle body level. So there's that component of it. And then through this rhythm, we're also lowering our brainwave state. So we're getting into alpha and even theta brainwave states, which is our subconscious mind. So when we get into this space, there may be fears, memories, traumas, emotions that we've stored in the limbic system of the brain in our bodies that we haven't fully processed, that are now coming to the surface to be processed, to be felt, and to be released. So we're bypassing the prefrontal cortex, which is, our analytical mind, our thinking mind, the seat of our ego, where our identity sits. Because of this process, the shift that's happening in our oxygen and our carbon dioxide levels, there's a shift in where the energy is distributed in the body, where the blood flow is distributed, in the oxygen levels that we have. And so there's more energy and oxygen to our limbic system, our emotional processing center, getting away from what's not necessary in that moment and getting into the core of where we are. So it's working on multiple different levels, and so people can have an emotional release during these sessions. And it may not necessarily be that it's something that's, painful or difficult or grief. It can definitely be those things, but sometimes we feel joy, we feel peace, we feel expansiveness, we feel a sense of connection. So every journey that you go on is different. And it's trusting that whatever is happening for you is what you need in that moment, because everyone's experience is completely different. It depends on you, on where you're at and what you're ready for, on what you're open to. And through this process of repatterning our breath, we can repattern our belief systems, our programming, our mentality around certain things, how we respond to certain things, these fixed beliefs that we hold. So breath is really this access point, and that's why, there's that famous quote that breath is the bridge between the unconscious and the conscious, between the body and the mind, between your physical body and your subtle body, because really we're tapping into every level of our being through breath. Your mental, emotional, your physical, the physiological function of your body, your energetic body, the spiritual body. And so it has effects on every single one of these levels, because, we're also an interconnected being. It's not that every function of the body is separate, that every layer of the body is separate. It's not that we're separate from our environment or separate from each other. And through breath, we have a very tangible experience of this.
There's so much information that you gave us there, and I'm going to try unpack it because a lot of it is stuff that I've come across, in my own individual research. Obviously, the nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system. People get into the flight or flight mode when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, and then they're stressed, and then they either have a fight, flight, or freeze reaction. And lifestyle at the moment keeps people constantly in that, especially if you're working in a corporate, deadlines, relationships, money stress, administration stuff. You end up constantly in a sympathetic state. It might not be extreme, but it's sort of like maybe a subtle sympathetic nervous system being activated, and you're stressed, and you don't get out of that, and the body is not able to function in that state of being constantly um, slightly stressed. So this also rebalances that nervous system function, right? As you like expanding into the sympathetic and exhaling out into the parasympathetic. So you sort of balancing that nervous system function. And as you said, the nervous system affects the whole being, like your stress, your hormones, your endocrine system, and everything. But I love that. So the one thing I want to focus on and talk about is the breath, and how people underestimate the breath. We take it for granted because we're just breathing all the time. And one thing that I noticed while I was studying this conscious connected breathing, or the technique at least that I came across, was when we are thinking in the past, or when we're in the worrying about the past or worrying about the future, we actually don't consciously breathe in that moment. So we actually somewhere else, not here, not present, and then you don't consciously breathe. Your body then will just breathe as it needs, but you're not consciously breathing because you're not even aware that you're breathing, the automatic breath. So actually consciously breathing, consciously being aware of the intake and outtake brings you back to the present. And there's a line that I remember from the book, I'll never forget it, is that you can't breathe in the past or the future. You can only breathe right now, in the present, right now, in the breath. So just focusing on the breath is like so powerful. It has many layers, I think, of benefits that it has to you. It brings you into the present. It puts focus on the air and the prana and the life force, all of that coming into your being. Maybe having a conscious feeling of where it's going in your body. All of that is so powerful. Maybe you can elaborate on the breath, because I think it's really underestimated.
So, I think I'd like to go into the nervous system a little more for listeners who may not be aware of it, and then bring breath into it so you have a deeper understanding. So, in our bodies, we have something known as the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so autonomic meaning automatic. It functions on its own. We don't have to use our conscious control to tell the body what to do and when to do it. So this system is divided into that stress response, which is that sympathetic fight or flight response, and there's the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. So how we've evolved as human beings is that, you know, thousands of years ago when we lived in the veldt, we were exposed to real life threats, to predators. So this nervous system developed and evolved for extreme threats. So we needed to mobilize all of our body's resources, all of our energy to either fight or to flee because our survival depended on it. So, what do we need in those circumstances? We need our heart rate to go up. We need our breathing to be faster. We need energy in our muscles. Our muscles need to pump. We're releasing glucose into the body. So, there's tension in the body. And our eyes, our focus becomes narrowed. Our thinking becomes very focused and narrowed. There's a particular threat that we're looking at. So, it affects our mental system as well. Our awareness is more focused on the external because the threat is external. And when that threat is averted, when we fought or when we fled, and now we're in safety, we should naturally switch to that parasympathetic nervous system. So that's when our body is regenerating, it's replenishing the stores of glucose, it's repairing any damage that's occurred. Now there's energy and blood flow diverted to our immune function, to our digestive function, to on a mind emotional level, to our creativity, to lateral thinking, to having an awareness of our internal body, so interoception. So when we're in stress, this connection to our internal body and what signals it's sending us, we're not really listening to or paying attention to because the threat is external. Or it can be our thoughts as well. I mean, it can be our thoughts that are creating the stress or the emotions that we're holding, but we perceive it to be outside of us. So we're not really connected to that body. So, like you mentioned, because of our modern lifestyle and all of these stresses, we're in this low grade fight or flight. And it's almost as though we've forgotten how to get into that parasympathetic nervous system. A lot of the times people will distract themselves when they feel stressed, scrolling on social media, watching TV, or even reading a book, which distracts you but not necessarily getting you into that parasympathetic state. And so when we're in this constant low grade stress, that's when the body is breaking down. It's not able to repair, it's not able to heal adequately. And so it's also important to look at the nervous system as a spectrum. It's not either all on and all off. There's different spaces that we can be in this nervous system. And so sometimes being too much in parasympathetic rest and digest may be uncomfortable for people too. So breath is the only part of this nervous system that is both automatic, so we don't have to control it, it is happening on its own, but we have conscious control. So we can tap into breath, and breath can shift that state. So when we learn to work with breath, we can learn to regulate the nervous system. So if you think about it, how does your breathing look when you're stressed, when you're angry, when you're overwhelmed? It's short, it's shallow, it's rapid. So it's reflecting what's going on internally. Our breath is also that language that's communicating with us what is going on with us. So if you start to pay attention, you'll notice, okay, I'm breathing like this. That means this is what my internal state may be like, or my physiological state. But when you're safe, when you're relaxed, when you're on holiday, there's an ease to the breath. There's a letting go, a softening. And so that's also reflective of the state that we're in. So it's constantly communicating with us. So if our breath is reflecting our internal state, if we can consciously control the breath, the reverse is also possible, that we can shift our state based on how we're breathing. If we deliberately, consciously will observe the breath or shift how the breath is functioning at any given point. So that is our access point into the nervous system. Okay, so we can use breath just for awareness. So that would be when we develop breath awareness, that's self-awareness. When we pay attention to how we're breathing, We're like, oh, this is what's going on internally. This is what's happening inside. This is what I'm feeling. So even without even shifting the breath, we're developing these skills just purely by observation, by being the witness of that breath, of our own, our breath is our personal language, it's our personal signature. Everybody's breath pattern may be different. And it's also reflective of, our belief systems, the patterns of tension that we're holding, who we're told to be, how we're told to show up in the world. It reflects all of these patterns. And so then we can get into regulatory techniques where we can actually consciously shift and influence the breath. So this may be using the breath to balance us in times throughout the day when you need balance between the nervous system, so between stress and relaxation. So when you need to be calm but alert throughout the day, you're going to balancing techniques such as um, coherent breath, so then equal inhale and exhale, or the square breath where you have pauses, so an inhale, pause, exhale, pause, but all of equal lengths. Or in yoga, there's Nadi Shona pranayama, or alternate nostril breathing. So the inhale and exhale are always equal when you want to balance. When you want to energize, this emphasis on the inhale because you're activating that parasympathetic, the sympathetic nervous system. So not all stress is bad stress. There is good stress also when it's intentional, when it's serving a purpose. When you need to fight or flee or get work done, or get into a state where you can get your work done. So there's good stress. It's just when it's chronic and it's long term, that's when it's detrimental, when we're not able to shift out of that state. So you can use techniques to activate that energizing response. So when you're having an afternoon slump and you're low on energy, you can tap into breath to wake you up. So or and you get an energy boost. You feel alive, you feel awakened. And there's techniques to relax you if you're too energized, too frazzled, if you want to wind down before bedtime to help you get into a deeper sleep. You emphasize the exhale. So and you can almost instantly feel the body down regulating. So it's playing with the breath also. It's, certain techniques we know have certain effects, but everyone is an individual. Everyone responds to different breathing techniques differently. So it's playing with those techniques for yourself as well and saying, well, what works for me? What influence does it have on me? Is this breath triggering for me, or is it comfortable, so that I know in which situation which breath to use? Because there's the science of breath, the understanding the physiology. There's a lot of research going into breathwork at the moment. There's a lot of interest in it, and it's really important because it draws people in. But there's also the art side of it. There's playing with it. There's experimentation. There's not following these rigid rules and these almost like dogmatized system of this must be this and that must be that. It's learning to create fluidity in your body, and that's through your breath. And so it should be used to create expansion, to create flow. So when we're working with nervous system, it's if your nervous system is fixed and rigid, that's a sign of poor health. And that reflects in like your vagus nerve tone or in your heart rate variability, versus when there's adaptability and fluidity and flexibility in that nervous system, then that's a sign of health because you can adapt more easily. You can, you may go into stress, but you can recover better. You can go into relaxation. There's comfort in different parts of the nervous system. And so that's what we're tapping into with breath when we're working with this nervous system. And it's such a simple, powerful tool that's available to you all the time, anywhere, for free, that when you're in need, you can just tap in. You can tap into yourself, you can tap into your body, you can connect. And that's what's really, really powerful and beautiful about breath. It's empowering, and it's bringing you back to self, and it's coming from you. It's not that you have to reach for something outside.
Yeah, I mean, the creator really thought about it, giving us this amazing tool. And like you said, it's the one tool that we have that we can consciously control. Yes, it can run on autopilot, and maybe most people on the planet are just breathing autopilotly, not consciously, but you can consciously breathe, and different techniques can have different results. You can energize yourself, you can relax yourself, you can tap into different parts of your being just by knowing different breathing techniques. And I think this is the powerful message that I really got out of this, is really understanding your breath, taking control of it, and then learning different techniques that you can use throughout your day. Because like you said, it's free, it's accessible, it's right there whenever you need it. So I have written a poem about meditation. I know maybe some of my viewers have heard it, but I just wanted to highlight one of my favorite verses, which probably highlights exactly what Dr. Priyal was talking about. And this is the trick to the art meditation. Just focus on your breath, your sole obligation. Breathe in and out. Keep flow chilled and even. On thoughts that pop by, tell 'em to be leaving. So let's get into that, because this is what happens when anyone starts meditating or breath work or something like that. For the first time, you start getting thoughts popping into your head. I need to do this. Oh, I need to pick up that. Oh, I forgot to pay this per. Oh, I forgot to SMS that per. Oh, I forgot this. You just have this bombardment. I guess as you start meditating and breathing, you get this bombardment of thoughts just coming in and distracting you and gnawing at your attention. And it takes time, I guess, of practice and many, many days and effort before those voices become less offensive or less domineering in your mind. But is there something you can advise us about these thoughts? I mean, what's maybe there's a different way to look at them?
So I think the first misconception people have a lot of the time is that they think that when they meditate, their mind is supposed to be still. Our mind is never still. We're always going to have thoughts unless you're a really, really advanced practitioner. So it's about observing those thoughts. It's becoming aware that the thoughts are there and that they're distracting you, and coming back to your focus point. So that may be breath or mantra or visualization. It's creating that awareness, so space between you and the thoughts. And over time, that becomes easier. But what I also find is, if you're somebody who is in a stressful state, if you're in your sympathetic nervous system, it's very difficult to sit down and meditate, because there's this perception of threat. So if you're perceiving threat, how do you sit down calmly and focus on a particular um, point of focus, whatever that may be for you? So I think it's oftentimes better to begin with breath in that instance, because you're able to use a tool to shift the state that you're in. So if you're beginning to meditate and really, really struggling and you're restless and it's uncomfortable, start with just doing breathwork maybe for a few minutes and then build from there. Or maybe you do a few minutes of breathwork and then sit in meditation. Um, it can just be breathwork for a long period of time until you're able to sit still for a while. So it's also understanding where you're at, because I think sometimes people, like, they understand that there's benefits to meditation, but they struggle to get into that space, and so they feel really judgmental of themselves, and oh, I can't do it, and oh, it's too hard. But it could just be the state that you're in that needs to be shifted.
I must admit, when I first started meditating, I mean, it sounds so simple. All you got to do is just sit there and breathe and try focus on your breath, whatever technique you're doing. But it was so challenging in the beginning to sit there for 15 minutes. Like I would constantly be looking at my alarm and saying, is my alarm not working? Like I'm sure I've gone past 15 minutes, and I look at my watch and it's like only 5 minutes. Because when you first do it, it just feels so long just to be with yourself internally. But I found over the months, there got to times where the 15 minutes would just fly past, and then I would increase my time, do 30 minutes, and then the 30 minutes would just fly past quickly, because you sort of get into this realm once you do this conscious connected breathing, and you tap into this realm, I think, where there's no time, and you get I don't know. It's like very weird. How does that actually happen? What happens in that time? Why is time sometimes dragging out for eons, and then other times 30 minutes goes by in a blink just through that meditative technique? Do you understand what's happening?
So I think it's this we've all heard this idea of time is a perception, and it's a perception of our egoic mind, also how we've been trained to look at time. And so when there's a shutdown of the ego and the analytical part of ourselves, and we're going into a different state, an internal state, or a different realm, there is no perception of time in that space. It's something that you have to experience to fully understand. But time is also a construct, and so when we're bypassing all of these belief systems, we're also getting into an internal space where, okay, maybe this is not what I thought it was. There's a different. So in the conscious connected breathwork, you're also experiencing expanded states of consciousness. So you're going into um, altered states, and so time is perceived differently, or it's not perceived, or it's you know experienced differently. It's seen as another dimension. It's not this linear process. And so that's as far as my understanding around that goes. But it's this beliefs around what time, the construct of time, also looks like, that we're now experiencing a different way of looking at it, experiencing it.
Yeah, it's really magical. And I would urge people who are getting into breath work or meditation, don't start on, on 30 minutes or 20 minutes. Start slowly and then slowly build up. And I guarantee you, over time, time doesn't take that long. So I wanted to touch on how breath work affected me. So I really got into it to deal with past trauma or release past trauma. And this conscious connected breath work, when doing it for a long period of time, it started bringing up past issues. It's like stuff that I had completely forgotten about, completely like hidden away. And I was oblivious to that, that I was even carrying it around. But once I started doing this, it brought this stuff to my memory, to my attention, for me to deal with it. So dealing with it is maybe another story that I have to talk about, but it really brings up blocked energies, I would feel, right? Just going in, connecting and aligning with yourself, and activating your parasympathetic nervous system, so being really calm, then I think these blocked energies sort of bubble up to our mind, to our attention, and then you have to deal with it. It might be some trauma from the past, some issues, some stresses, whatever. But I found that really powerful, and it helped me then to find ways of doing the actual release work. I guess there's definitely release work you can get through the breath work, right? By really activating your parasympathetic nervous system. Somatic techniques, I understand there's breath work that are like somatic techniques as well. So maybe you can talk about how it helps with blocked energies and traumas, because I found that extremely, extremely powerful for me in my life.
Mm. So I'd just like to add another point quickly, also with regard to the meditation, is for some people, being still doesn't feel safe, and also their body doesn't feel like a safe space. And that's why they may also struggle to sit still and to meditate in those instances. So with breath work, it's also important in those instances to be in a guided session, because when you have someone holding space for you, it's easier to soften into yourself because you feel safe, you feel held. Um, so I think that's also a key component of these processes, is that we're not individuals functioning completely separately. We co-regulate with other people, with other people's nervous systems, with our surroundings. And so when we're in a space where there is safety created, you can automatically start to relax. You can automatically start to let go a little more. And so when we feel safe, we allow ourselves to go into deeper spaces. We allow ourselves to feel those uncomfortable emotions, those memories, those things that we previously didn't have the tools or the capacities to deal with. So one component is definitely breath, but it's also that, we heal with each other. We heal in community. It's not an isolated process. We've become so, hyper individualistic in society, and we've forgotten that we're all one. We're all one community. We all influence each other. So that's one component of the process. But, when we experience traumas or fears, it stays in the nervous system, it stays in the body. So if at a certain level of stress you experience, there was a certain trauma, you don't want to go to that part of your nervous system. So you stay lower down, you stay in this bandwidth. Okay, because it's not safe, because that's where the trauma is, or whether that's in the parasympathetic. So in the breath, you're getting into those parts of the nervous system and the body where those traumas and fears and memories were stored. And so that's why it's able to come up and release. And also through going into the subconscious mind, where we've suppressed and held these memories where they haven't been fully integrated. So we're getting into expanding into that nervous system, and then dropping into those lower brainwave states, so into that subconscious mind where these fears are held. Because maybe as a child we didn't have the tools, we didn't have the means, we didn't know how to process it, so we just internalized it. And so there's those elements. And then obviously working on the energetic circuit. During the sessions, people may experience sensations like tingling, spasms, tetany in the body. And this can sometimes be seen as, energetic blocks that we've held in the body. There's a physiological reason for it, but also on an energetic, emotional level, maybe something is held and needing to shift or release. So we go into these states. And so as we're breathing in, we're taking in this prana, we're expanding into these spaces that were previously contracted, and then softening into it, which is allowing us to release. So even though these emotions may come up during the session, there's always time afterwards for integration. So you don't leave with this heaviness that you're carrying all of these things. Because as we're shifting our oxygen, carbon dioxide, we're shifting, pH, we're shifting all of these states within our body, we allow time for the rebalancing to occur towards the end. So the cathartic process, and then integration, where you're coming back to balance and possibly a new balance. Um, and so there's time to recalibrate before you come out of that process. And I think, one aspect of it is also we become so caught up in our lives, in our world, and us as individuals. And when we get past this hyper individualism, this egoic mindset, and we connect to our inner self, we connect to source, whatever that may be for that individual, we connect to our higher self, to our intuition, something beyond just the superficial perception of life. There's a knowingness, there's a wisdom that's held in the body, an innate intelligence that knows what it's doing, that knows how to guide us, that knows how to heal us. And that's what we're really tapping into and having an experience of. And it starts to soften and dissolve these boundaries that we've created. And, we begin to feel more connected to ourselves, but more connected to nature, more connected to each other. And that then shifts how we also relate to ourselves and to each other, and how we relate to the world at large, and the intention we want to go out into the world with.
Yeah, it's so true because when I started meditating a lot, I realized I didn't enjoy my work. And I was working in corporate at the time. And that sort of shifted maybe a slight trajectory change. And I did more yoga. And then I ended up here many years later, now doing, natural energy work and healing work and all that stuff. And it all started with meditating because when I really connected within myself, I then got this feeling like, I don't really like what I'm doing. And I don't think I would have ever come to that realization because you're so busy running the race, you're so busy trying to make money and chasing the next big deal and contract and etc. And this ego-driven need, just to compete with the rest of society. I don't think I would have ever got that realization that I didn't enjoy it if I didn't start meditating more often. And you're right, it brings you that connection with others, with yourself, with what your purpose is, with what you like. And I don't know, it's like a resonance thing. I just felt like, oh man, this corporate doesn't resonate with me. I need to find something else, and started my change. So, Dr. Priyal, I wanted to shift here just for the last 20 minutes or so of our podcast into integrative medicine, because you're also an integrative medicine practitioner. So, for us that are laymen, what does integrative medicine mean? It's like a bit of a buzzword lately.
Yeah, it has become. So, integrative medicine means that you do have a medical background, a Western medical background that you're trained in, but you've moved towards a more holistic approach to your healing. So you understand the connection of mind, body, and spirit, and that there's an innate intelligence in our body. There is a wisdom that knows what to do, how to support us, and how to heal. But we just need to get out of its way and using natural ways and means to support those processes so that the body can do the healing. So, oftentimes in Western medicine, it's that the medications and the drugs are so powerful, it just completely takes over the process and it shifts the natural processes that the body is going through. Whereas with integrative medicine, whatever tools or modalities you're using, it's to gently support the body so that the body knows what it needs to do and how to take over and heal that process. So there's elements of lifestyle changes, using supplementation, herbal things, vitamins, nutrients. And a big part of it is your mindset. People often still try to focus on the physical side of it, but mind and body is actually one. It's not even mind body connection, it is one and the same. So what's going on mentally, emotionally is reflecting in the body, and vice versa. So it's different expressions of the same one. So it's working on the mindset. What are the beliefs around what's going on, whether it's emotionally or physiologically, or if there's dis-ease in the body? What is the story that you're telling yourself, and the narrative that's holding you in this space? Because when you shift the story, you're also shifting the expression of what you're holding. So that may be the physical ailment. Um, so our mind sends signals to the body telling it what genes to express or what molecules to release. And so when we work on our mindset, we're also shifting how the body is physiologically functioning. So integrative medicine is any any integrative doctor may have a different number of modalities that they focus on and they use. For me, breathwork is a core part of my practice and actually the main focus, where I support people, with lifestyle, with supplementation, working on that story, and then using breath as a tool to bring that all together. Because it's just such a powerful way to tap into that intelligence within us and to create those shifts in our lives.
So when you mentioned the changing the story, I just remembered Dr. Brom. I know you mentioned that you actually know Dr. Brom. He was on my show as well, and he spoke about how you need to first change the story that the person is running, the mental dialogue that they have in their life. What a story is there? Are they telling themselves? Are they saying they're the hero of the story, or are they the victim that's having everything bad happen to them, the lowly, unlucky person? And that dialogue affects your physiology. And it's so true that whatever you keep telling yourself, your body is actually going to start doing that because you're the CEO of your body, right? You're the one that's like dictating the direction of this business with millions of employees. And if you keep saying you're the victim, well, that's really what they're going to do. So I just wanted to ask a few things about Western medicine. I know Dr. Brom, he mentioned that I think for the last 4 decades or so, he doesn't prescribe any medication. He does still consult clients a lot, and he then gives them like kelp, which is full of nutrients, or seaweed or something, and then like vitamin B, brewer's yeast, and something like that, just like some basic supplements, and he puts them on a diet. And he's seen miracles, like people cured from diabetes, hypertension, blood pressure issues, these so-called chronic ailments that people, millions of people, must be taking chronic medication for daily. Dr. Brom was just able to treat, like you said, by supporting the body, right? Just giving it some necessary nutrients and supplements, and then putting them on a mostly vegetarian type of diet, and somehow chronic illnesses disappeared. Like, is that possible? Is this really what can actually happen with such simple methods?
So I think that we've, forgotten or made to forget just how incredibly powerful we are as human beings and the potential that we have within us. And that's part of the reason why I appreciate breathwork so much, is because we're having a tangible experience of something powerful, something beyond what we've been made aware of previously. And I think, the body is incredibly resilient, it's incredibly capable. Um, if you look at stories of, yogis or monks performing these incredible feats, or even if you look at someone like Wim Hof, who's a breathwork practitioner, and being able to get into these transcendental states, being able to heal their bodies, living for many, many years beyond what's considered normal. And this is not something that is special and unique to them. This is a capability that we all have within us, that we can all tap into. But it's also our own individual journey in the process. Yes, we can eat correctly, we can take the right supplements, we can do the movements, but we also need to tap into that space within ourselves. We also need to deal with the belief systems, the patterns that we're holding, the stories we tell ourselves, the emotions that we don't want to deal with. And there's always this factor of the mystical, the something beyond our comprehension, and something that we can, the unknown, we can tap into it, we can access it, we can lean into it. Sometimes we're afraid of it, but there's a huge component that's not in our control, and it's your journey back to self. So dis-ease is that disconnection from self. It's where we've veered away from who we are, and all of these processes are just to bring us back to self. And so it's often said that, the disease is the roadmap showing us the way back to self. It's showing us where the symptoms are. So it's, in some instances, sure, it can be as simple as changing diet and some lifestyle aspects, but for some people it may be needing to do that in deeper inner work, needing to go on that journey. There's no one quick fix, there's no one answer and solution to every single person and every single ailment, but it's looking at it, uniquely, and what is that person's journey.
That is actually so wise, because you're right. It's not just diet that can fix everybody. Everyone's got a different issue, and the dis-ease or the disease is telling us, oh, something's out of whack in the body, something's out of balance. You need to go fix it, but you need to figure out, what is it? Is it diet? Is it something mental? Is it something emotional? Is it a past trauma? Is it some? And figure out the way, and that's your journey. Isn't that such a beautiful experience that we get to have in life, to find out and to learn and to then just become whole again. So everyone, I am going to leave links to Dr. Priyal. You can check below the video, Facebook page. She's on social. She's very active. She does breathwork classes, workshops. She is all over the place trying to help you guys get back to balance. Dr. Priyal, we really appreciate your time. And I'm so grateful that we persisted to connect, because it took us quite a long time to eventually get this podcast together. But it is so powerful. To the people that have watched it, this will transform your life, guaranteed. It's accessible to you. It is free. All you need to know is how to learn to breathe. Dr. Priyal, any final words before we close off?
Um, I would say that, I think everybody owes it to themselves to, even if it's by themselves at home, and you just find a video, a podcast, an app, just to tap into your breath, just to feel it for yourself, to experience the power of it and how it can shift and transform your life. If going to somebody is not feasible for you, that's not the only option. There are many options out there. You just have to be willing to sit with it and be with it and try even one technique, and it will really help you take your power back, really help you connect to yourself, your own agency, um, maybe even a sense of purpose, and just being a more whole human being, being more connected. And even if it's just one breath at a time, I think it's definitely worth at least taking that step and that initiative.
So, closing off, just to reiterate what Dr. Priyal was saying, one more verse from my meditation poem. When you Google meditation, you get many options for relaxing and focus and manifestations. Don't let the list get you overwhelmed. Choose one that resonates at your helm. So, on that note, there are so many different breathwork techniques out there. We're not saying this one is the one all be all. Try one that works. If it doesn't, try another one. There will be one that resonates with you, and you'll be off on your way. So, until next time, everyone, ciao for now.